And we are live. Mr. Arthur, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I got slammed with, we'll call it work today. I got slammed in the shop and then different things going on here on the farm. So I threw stuff together here towards the very end, but I think we're doing all right. And tonight we're going to jump in. Oh, we're going to start with Fox and the Hound, and then we're going to move into Turtles. I think one's going to have a bit more interesting conversation, but I might be wrong here. So let's just start with Fox and the Hound and jump right into it. What do you even remember about this? Or just run me off if you've ever ran hounds or whatever. What your whole perception of the idea is?
So no, we never had hounds, but I'm a native Texan, and growing up there, I had buddies where their dads had hounds, and they used them for stuff and
Yeah.
whatnot. And so, of course, I understand the functionality and the usage for them. But I'm like I said, it's been so long since I've seen the movie, so I'm kind of doing the mental Rolodex
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now, thinking back to the themes and whatnot.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, growing up, everybody had some animals
yes.
and uses for them.
So we grew up very suburban, very suburban. We didn't even have. I got my first dog when I was in my 20s when I had already moved out, and so uh, we had no reference point for that. Watched the movie a ton growing up, and I will throw myself under the bus and say I was Team Todd growing up. I, I was Team Todd, Team Fox, and then for some reason, at some point, I don't know if it's after I got my first hound or if it was when I was a teenager. I was like, that's not right. That first, the Fox was a bit of a cheeky bastard, but then two, he should have never been in that position. And then the more I thought about that, so that's
Sure.
when, at some point during a what you would call it, hanging out in right spheres, maybe the far right, started thinking this is a great movie. This is like a whole bunch of truths that we kind of think about, and we're all supposed to be Team Todd, but why? He doesn't even make it to the end, right? I mean, he does, but not within the artificial framework that they had created. The
No, and
yeah, jump in.
sorry,
No, you're good.
I was saying no. Then also, as it's so funny as we talk. Like I said, I haven't seen it in forever, but scenes are starting to come back to me, and I remember now that Todd the fox,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Todd was the
You
fox,
got it.
right? Yeah, he, he was he was being helped by what was it the widow lady down the street, another lady, like she was just always taking up
Yeah,
for
the
him and
widow Tweed.
getting him kind of out of getting him out of trouble and whatnot. And so he really had that kind of female empathy support there, even though the farmer kept on telling him like he's a fox, this is what he does, and then she just wouldn't listen, like, oh no, he's good.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's really easy to jump on and say that. Well, let's just start drawing some parallels. So, like I said, I couldn't find a good video source on this to run clips, and frankly, Disney might have thrown the book in my channel immediately. Anyways, you could start drawing names and parallels to the different characters in there, and if Amos the houndsman, the huntsman, we could say that he's the stand-in for the West, and then the widow Tweed is the 19th Amendment, is feminism, is liberalism, and how we don't have to worry about what is. All we have to worry
Hmm.
about is what we want to be. And we see that, and we see that sort of idea, that loosey goosey, how do we want to make the future? We see that get pushed at whether the fox is swiping at a chicken and freaking it out, or going after a cow and the cow's like, why am I dealing with this? And so we get little glimpses all throughout the movie. But then we also see these birds. Now the birds, I'm not going to say what the birds are cognate for, but if you look at the birds, they can be. they could be a stand-in for a particular group that would like to make the world in a particular image of their choosing. And so this group, they get to go and they get to push the fox onto the widow and say, "Hey, don't you want to take care of this fox? Don't you want to do the right thing as we've declared it?" And she says, "Sure, I'll do that." And they get to go and fly away in the winter. They don't really have to deal with any of the repercussions of what's going on. They'll come back in the spring and they'll say, "Hey, you're doing it wrong. Let me tell you how you need to be taking care of this fox." But they have no skin in the game. They can just fly away at any point. So if you really want to go down the road, you can start making cognates and pulling all sorts of pictures out within these groups and these characters. I don't know if any of that's ringing a bell.
No, no. I like I said, I just pulled up the well, it's the IMDb, so I could kind of refresh a
Sure.
bit more and writing down the characters' names, taking a few notes, and kind of putting it together. And I'm just realizing, yeah, this show came out in 1981. So yeah, I obviously did not see it when it came out. So this would have been one of those back in the day on the Disney Channel being played over and over and over. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
and
Okay.
then and then like you said with the VHS, same thing as a kid. I had the whole library of VHS movies
Yeah.
and Disney's and everything else.
Dude, our poor parents, they were paying what, like $80 in today's dollars to get those VHSs when they came out.
Oh shoot! I mean, yeah, you think about it. I mean, we're talking they were like 29.99 or something like that
Oh yeah.
because they came with the fancy, the cover, and it
Yes.
was, and Disney had that wonderful thing of
The white
for a limited,
squishy boxes.
yep. But it would say,
Yeah.
for a limited time before it goes back
Yes.
into the
Yes.
vault,
The vault.
the vault.
Stupid
Yeah,
vault.
and it's just hilarious to even think of that nowadays with every streaming service out there, and just there is no vault. You know.
Yeah. Well, so that's actually an interesting thing. Who was it? I saw somebody. It might have been Fisher. Uh, I'd seen up on X. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was today. But he was talking about how trusted communities are the way of the future. And I replied. I said, that I think is one of the big arguments when folks jump on and they say, "Hey, we want Blockbuster to come back. We want Blockbuster." It's not just nostalgia, but it's like there was this time when there was this kid behind the counter who had way too much time on his hands, watched way too many movies, right? It probably wasn't good for him, but he could be behind the counter and mom comes in with her kids and says, "Hey, what's something good for them? They've seen all the latest movies." And he would know that.
Yeah.
Somebody would come in and say, "Hey, I want an action movie," and you could just run down the list, and he would know these things. And that was sort of the rather than sitting there on Netflix and scrolling through thousands of things and taking a guess, he was that trusted community. And
Not to
I think,
mention, not to mention that blockbusters weren't getting knocked over, and even if we would have had the cell phones and everything back then, 30, 40 years ago, there weren't videos of the mayhem and pandemonium that you see nowadays. Because you just imagine, I mean, look at how much of a soft target a blockbuster really was back in the day. All Do you remember picking up a movie and looking on the back and the retail price would be like $129 or something, like
oh
don't
man,
lose the movie.
oh yeah,
And it's another sign of where we're at, that you look back and you're going, people went in, you got movies, they trusted
yep,
you to bring them back.
hmm
There was a social interaction there, as you said just a moment ago. Come in, hey, what's good, what movie do you recommend? An actual
yes,
exchange within the community there, knowing who's in your community.
yeah.
That
Well,
goes back.
that
I was
goes
just
back. What's that?
That goes back to uh little promo plug, but my latest essay on the mass immigration, and I put in a couple of anecdotes of just what I see here in California and things that I've noticed. And it's foreign to me, of course, not that old, and it wasn't that long ago where these things just were not happening. It's
Yep,
a cultural decay.
it's it's amazing, and I don't want to. It's really easy for the millennials to jump in and say, "Oh, You guys will never know how good it was, but there's some truth in there.
Yeah,
It it was a different world,
yeah.
and I cannot believe how quickly that world changed.
I'm actually the latest one essay I'm working on is I'm kind of doing a review and analysis of the movie Falling Down, and it came out in 1993,
Is
and
that
there,
Michael
as you say,
Douglas?
yeah, he played
Okay.
defense. His character's name was Defense Billy Foster or whatever, and it came out in 1993. And one thing, through my research and looking at it, when it came out, yeah, there were problems. We throughout the 90s, you had the Waco siege, Ruby Ridge,
Yeah.
Somalia. There were signs and cracks starting to show, but the vibe was still there. I mean, Francis Fukuyama's End of History, which everyone misunderstands that book. It's not about end of history. History was going to keep going on. What he talked about is that communism fell, the Berlin Wall's gone, the USSR is dissolved, the liberal democracy is won. There's not going to be anything else after this. So there were signs there in the 90s. So I as you say, I get a bit wary when people within our group of millennials like, oh, the 90s were the best time ever. And it's like, no, we were just we had the blinders on a bit, not seeing the mold starting to appear within the
Yeah.
culture and stuff.
Well, and we were insulated just due to our age at that point, and so any
Yeah.
child's going to be insulated to some degree, but it was a little better. Yeah. You know,
Oh no. Yeah.
it was just like you were talking about though. In the background, the seeds had already been planted.
Yeah.
It's easy to draw a line of demarcation in 2008 when Obama took the White House. Like it's easy to go there, and to some degree, maybe that is the most visible time that happened. But that was just a continuation of issues that had already been springing up.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say about 2008, if we were taking that as kind of a time marker, I would agree to the point that that's where the curtain started coming back, and you could see into the backstage, and they weren't afraid of you seeing backstage, and it just more and more of it kept popping up.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, back to the Fox and the Hound. So like you said, you have Amos, kind of a stand-in for Western civilization.
Yep. So then I would say the Widow Tweed was feminism, liberalism, however you want to word it. It's easy to jump to feminism because it is a woman. Um, so you got that going on, and it's also that idea of how and what ways and negative. We're putting a negative spin on it. In what ways does feminism negatively show up? And it is in the concern for um, not the future, but the now, for the present.
Mhm.
This extreme in the present kind of feeling. And so I see Fox, and Fox isn't doing well. So let me make sure that Fox can thrive. Well, Fox thriving means that Fox winds up interfering with life as it has been.
Yeah, I'm just kind
You
of
know.
laughing. I'm thinking of Widow Tweed as the OG social justice warrior.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's wild. If they were to make it now, I don't know how they could remake this movie without because to without burying the lead for those that haven't seen it. The end of the movie is that, oh, we should have never done this. Fox doesn't need to belong over here. Hounds are over here. Fox is over here, and everything goes back to the way it should have been. Even to the point that the Widow Tweed and Amos the Huntsman, they're working well with one another. And it really, when it, I'm telling you, some light bulb went off at one point, and I was like, "Holy crap! This is it's baby's first Substack article." You know?
So, do you remember the character Chief?
Oh
Because I'm
yeah,
just looking at the cast again, and like I said, mental Rolodex. It's coming back to me. He was the old dog, and
Yep.
wasn't he the one? I mean, not Todd, but Cop,
Copper.
Copper,
Yeah, yeah.
Copper. He was the one who was kind of the voice of reason, wasn't he? Telling it, basically, kind of telling him how it was. Like, hey, he's a fox. This is how they live.
Yep.
This is where he belongs.
Knock it
And
off.
yeah, and not to
Uh-huh.
give away spoilers for a 40-something-year-old movie for anybody, but at the end, it it does kind of have the happy ending because, Todd goes back to the forest, he meets Vixen, the
Yes.
female fox, and they go and they live the way they were meant to live. The way
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep. And so then that is it's a question of how spicy you want to get, and I'm not going to get terribly spicy tonight, but I think there is something to be said there when it comes to let's just argue from culture that different cultures don't integrate well with one another. And so we at this point we've been arguing demographics for decades now, and that's what it's going to come down to a point. And that point that I'm talking about is this tipping point of what is the expectation of the majority within a particular area, the majority people group. And so if the majority people group says that um, clean streets and trust, and that a blockbuster is okay, that's sort of high trust society, that's what they want, that's what we're going to have. But if you have a majority of people who don't think that is don't think that is valuable, or if we do want to go down the HBD route, just don't, that's not in their biosphere, that's not in their biological makeup, uh, then we're not going to have that. We're going to have whatever is within the majority of folks within a particular area.
Yeah, so here in California, this it was a social media post probably about 2 years ago, but the meaning still rings true. Someone put up a map of Los Angeles and locations of Trader Joe's. And of course, they were trying to point out, look, they don't build in this area. And then a very smart person, somebody witty, went over and got a heat map of crime and, kind of laid that over. And it was just amazing how you see, just that almost kind of that outer space picture where it shows the great void.
Yes,
You know what I'm talking about? Where no stars. Yeah, that's where no Trader Joe's were, and that was the reddest part of the crime map as well.
yes,
And it kind of goes back to that old canard of food deserts and whatnot. And no, businesses want to make money. They just don't want to get stolen from and get slippage and have to hire extra security and all these other measures that have to be put into place. It's not economically viable.
yeah.
So
Well,
you know it, it,
I'll go on a
it
little bit of a digression with that too, because what happens is what you can see out of focus right now is I'm in my farm shop, and I purposely came and I put this in a food desert. I'm now several years into this, and I understand part of the reason it's a food desert is because people just don't care. They want the cheapest product that will be the most satiating, not necessarily in a healthy way, not in a way that's helping them or their family, but in a way that they can understand. They can go and grab it, they can eat it, and they can be done. It takes nothing more than that. And so to come out here and try to build on cabbages and tomatoes and on grass-fed pork or grass-fed beef or anything, the of bulk of my customer, I would say probably an 80-20 ratio is tourists. You know,
I'm glad you brought that up because here I've helped out with, of course, food banks and whatnot, and everything else here in California, and all the time it's canned goods, processed food. They don't want fresh stuff because it doesn't get picked
yeah,
up. People come in and they're going, like you said, for the fastest thing they can. So it's not. It's surprising to me because, like I said, I grew up in rural Texas, and there were tons of farmer markets, and so
yeah,
we were always going and getting fresh veggies. We had a garden, and when I say we had a garden, it was like a 4-acre garden. It was a
yes.
it was a big
Well,
one,
and that's a
and
that's a good point too, in that The people out where I'm at who want that, they still have the family garden, and there's still
Mhm.
maybe they raise out a couple hogs or a single beef or whatever, and they've got the so that's a very fair point.
Yeah, but it just like you said, people live a certain way.
Mhm.
Um, didn't really introduce myself, my background, but I'm retired military, traveled around the world, and so what Panda's bringing up about how people aren't the same. People are totally different. It's amazing for people to have that, for folks to have that mindset, however you want to call it, the progressive mindset, SJW mindset, liberals, whatever your flavor is on that one, how they look at it and say, well, no, people are just blank slates. They all want the same things. They all act the same way, as if every group doesn't have their own traditions, their own customs, their own, social etiquette. And, you know, for all the talk of diversity, well, guess what? The most diverse place in the world is the continent of Africa. It's thousands upon thousands of languages, thousands of tribes, and it's a nightmare. And it's to me, it's still hilarious that I actually talked with a gentleman a while back, and we had gone to some of the same places in Africa, but just with different results, because he's asking me, "Oh, you were here?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, where did you stay? Did you stay at the insert five-star hotel?" No, no, man. I was on the ground there. So his entire perspective and impressions of the people and the way things work there, well, it was all fantasy. It was all what he got to see. He got the Disneyland trip. He didn't go back and see the performers. He didn't see the machinery behind it, but he thought he was a world traveled person who knew these places. And it's that mentality is well, it's a death knell to Western civilization if you get too many people in power who believe that
Yeah,
you can just throw everybody in like a global terrarium,
yeah, and
and it's just going to work.
Africa is a good point because of how concentrated it is. I know a fellow that was doing a lot of infrastructure work over in Rwanda, and that particular incident in the '90s between the Tutsi and the Hutus, you don't ever bring it up, but it's something that sits there in the background, and it just how would I put it? It's embers for another day. Now, right now, because of the amount of Western aid, they're able to say, well, the West isn't helping enough. But late underneath that, it's well, we don't really talk about each other. That was a bad time, and that's a bad time that has the potential to spark up again when Western aid leaves.
And what I was going to add to that is just left out and just not said is the 1994 Rwanda genocide. That was not the first one. They ramped up after colonization in the 60s when they got the independence. That was pretty much a semi-regular event, not on the scale it was in 1994 with like 400,000 plus dead, but it pretty much flared up roughly every 2 to 3 years, all the way to that point where it went crazy there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, you see the was thinking about going into South Africa, but at some point it's like a subject has been done sort of to death. And so if you're watching the stream, you're probably well aware of what goes on with the EFF in South Africa and Zulu versus coloreds and so on. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is what it is. And so here we are watching the Fox and the Hound, and it's like, how are these two related? And it's right there on the screen. And there was a point in our history, at the very least until 1981, when this movie's released, where we could say there is a natural way that things are. Let's not even say should. There's a way in which things seem to operate best when they're flourishing, when they're in their lane, moisturized and happy and just ready to go. And when you start messing with that, people start getting frustrated and things go south very quickly.
Yeah, directly related to that is how many don't seem to understand human nature does not age. It hasn't aged since it became we became aware of it. People are going to group up with people they want to group up with. People are going to be interested in things. It's natural. That's what's natural, is just to understand and respect those lines. But when you start trying to put the square widgets into the circles, or try to pretend that this is normal, this is okay, even when it's not at all, or just everyone walking around acting like things are fine when it's just papering over with money, with whatever you want to say, resources, as you pointed out with the Western aid, that it's just kind of covering up the truth of it all. It's not like emperor has no clothes style mentality.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a real quick aside before I forget this, the book was actually written. Let me walk it back a little bit. The book is wild. Did you ever read that as a kid?
No, I'm looking it up
It
right
is.
now.
It's extremely different from the movie. So actually, I won't give any spoilers away on that, other than to say it's extremely different, and it's written in a very curious style. And it had been out of print for decades, and so the only way to really read it was digital, and it's worth a read. It is, especially if you do the dog book thing, Big Red, Old Yeller, all of that. It's worth the read. However, it is now going back into publication. I have a pre-order on it because it's coming out in August of this year. And so the fun thing about it as well is, what's his name? Mannix, or I think it's Mannix that wrote it.
Daniel P.
Yeah.
Mannix.
So he was, if I remember correctly, shoot, I should have had this pulled up earlier. Let's see. I believe he was an admiral. Let's see. American writer, journalist, photographer, sideshow performer, stage magician, animal trainer, and filmmaker. So I had thought, yeah,
Wow.
he's a wild dude. Where was I thinking?
He was a dilettante of life.
I had thought, I don't know what crack I was smoking. I had thought he was way up in the Navy. But regardless, he was not that. But if you just start reading about this guy, take out the military service, but it's another Hemingway, it's another Kipling, it's another guy who was out there living life. And so when he writes, it comes through in the book. The hunting, the
He,
there's anachronisms in there when he's calling German shepherds Alsatians. And it's like, oh man, what is this guy writing from? So,
I mean, it does say here he was a naval lieutenant during World War
ah,
II.
okay, is that what it was? So,
Yeah, but it doesn't look like he was in theater. It shows that he was stationed in D.C. with the photoscience laboratory, tasked with creating training films.
well, that's we've all got a job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
But here's an interesting tidbit that he wrote a book in 1958 called "Those About to Die," that was the inspiration for the Ridley Scott film Gladiator in 2000,
I think, when was it he passed away? It was the 90s. Yeah.
1997.
So relatively recent, certainly more recent than, well, actually, now that I say that, I think Heinlein passed away in the 70s, but I might be wrong on that.
Early 80s.
Ah, late 80s, 1988. So a little
Ah,
bit after Heinlein. Actually, it might even been. Anyway, all this, I'm mumbling and it's sort of going all around the corner. Check the book out if you have time. Like I said, it's being republished. It's going to come out, and so you don't have to deal with all the nonsense of reading on a Kindle or anything like I did. I hate Kindle. You have any thoughts on e-readers?
yeah, like I said, when it first came out, I have one,
Uh-huh.
and it is convenient because I think I have probably 400 plus books on the Kindle. But when I find something, especially in political writings or just a favored novel, I still get the
Oh
paper
yeah.
because nothing beats that. Nothing beats, just curling up with the book. But it is nice to have the Kindle just, on the go if you want to look stuff up. The only thing I'm worried about is how we've seen in the last few years where they are going in and doing the updates and changing stuff. Have you heard about that where
I've
they've
heard
gone in and
on
changed?
exclusively on Kindle, but I don't know what would stop Kobo or Apple or anybody else from doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's just kind of a disturbing trend where they can just go in and send an update and change up the verbiage or even themes of a
Right.
story.
Well, that was I remember them talking about. Now, this was not on digital exclusively, but if I remember correctly, there was a season there where they were hoping to do that with oh doggone it, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Roald Dahl. Yeah,
Oh, Ronald Dahl. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
which
So
his books are definitely different from the film
yes,
adaptations.
I have yet to read Witches. I know I need to, but um, yeah. So that is one thing I will say. I appreciate the digital stuff for searching. If you've got a quote that you're trying to remember, you can get in there somewhere. But then the other part, actually that just popped up from Middleton, and he's saying the same thing. E-readers are super useful for their search function, though I loathe myself for using them. Yeah, that's the search function is huge. The
Yeah,
other one I will say, just because we live in the time and age we do, uh, comic books. So coming up, we're going to be talking about TMNT here in a little bit. Uh, I have the I have the entire collection of that, which there's no way I could afford that. I would not feel right spending the amount of money that it would take to get the physical editions of that. Even with the IDW books, I just don't have it right now. And so it pops up on Humble Bundle for $15 or whatever, and it's like, well, I could do that. It's the e-readers are nice on that.
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic. There's got to be what, thousands of
Well,
editions
yeah,
by
and
now.
so it gets interesting if you're counting IDW as well as Mirage.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just gets wild. But yeah, I spent 30 or $40 on Humble, and I've got both runs. And so I don't have all the Archies. I don't have all the who else did it? Mirage, Archie, IDW. Yeah, I don't think don't have all of it, but I've got the two main lines, and that's fine for me. Uh, I can't lie. That's comic books are not my thing, but Ninja Turtles kind of are. So here we are. But uh, yeah, I don't know. So we finished it. The other cool part about Fox and the Hound is Daggum. Uh, Mr. Snake Plissken is in there as the voice of
Yeah,
Copper.
Kurt
Yeah,
Russell. Yeah.
so that
Well, I
that
mean,
was
for
fun.
the longest time, Disney basically had him on like a 20-year retainer almost, wasn't it?
Was
Because they
it?
started
I
with,
didn't realize it.
yeah, Kurt Russell. You look back to it, and he of course started his career as a child actor,
Yeah,
but I mean, don't get me lying. I can't remember how many Disney productions he was in besides
yeah.
Fox and the Hound, but it's a lot. Like he was like kind of good friends with Walt Disney. Walt liked him, and so he was put
Was
into a
he?
lot of productions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know all that. So I know I've been watching something, and it. You ever watch a documentary or a purported documentary, and somebody says something, and it's like, you just took me out of the action. Like I know that's wrong.
Oh, do you had the Gale man amnesia effect while watching, going, wait, this person, that's not true. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was, and so what it was, they were talking about how Robin Williams changed Disney forever because he was the first major star that they had as a voice actor. And I was like, in what world are you from? Because they had Kurt Russell, Corey Feldman at this time he was in the movie. He was, I don't know if Goonies had already come out, but his star was rising.
No,
And then
no, he was little bitty then because Goonies came out in '85 and he was about maybe 14 there. So
okay,
crap, he probably had to be like 10 years old during that one.
yeah, but I know they were doing that. Who was that? There were multiple big names in the Robin Hood, in the animated Robin Hood. But Zsa Zsa Gabor was in the Daggum Aristocats, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, I mean, even in the Fox and the Hound, I'm looking right now. Mickey Rooney
Yeah,
was one of the
right.
voice actors in that one.
So just that little quip was enough to pull me out of that guy's video and be like, "You have no clue what you're talking about." So I hate that, but it happens.
That happens for me mostly when I'm watching history documentaries,
Yeah,
and you're going, okay, that's not true, and you're kind of looking around going, we all know that's not true anymore, but you're still pushing that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Well, man, that was another.
Jack.
I remember being a kid. When did the History Channel come out? I remember it blowing up, right? Like you had Shark Week, and then you had Hitler Week or whatever they called it on the History Channel. It's
Well, they used to remember the moniker was the Hitler Channel
yeah.
because everything was Hitler and World War
I was gonna
II, and
say it just took
yeah,
over the
I mean,
entire channel, and
you know,
it was great. There was,
I mean, it got pretty funny at the end when they started going way out there in the ancient alien style of saying, "Did Hitler have a secret spaceship that landed in Antarctica?" And you're going, "Okay, you got my attention." I mean, I don't buy this for a minute, but it is entertaining.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how true any of this is, but we'll go with it. So
Yeah,
that was
I got my
oh
popcorn. I got an hour to burn.
well, and it's funny because there were little breadcrumbs that were interesting. I was like 14, 15 years old when I first heard about the Skull and Bones on the History Channel. It's like let us tell you about the secret fraternity that the Bushes were in when they were at Yale, and it's like, wow, all right,
John Kerry as well. You're like, wow, okay. And then you go
yeah,
down that rabbit hole and you're going, next thing you know, you're
oh,
in Bohemian Grove looking around going, wait, how did I get
that's
here?
interesting. I don't know. the History Channel, the History Channel primed the pump for Alex Jones. I don't know if I could have eaten his cookies, but
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I mean, we're getting way away from the Fox and the Hound or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, but I like this tangent. This is interesting.
Yeah, I just never. That's interesting because it's like I woke up one morning and I'm watching the Alex Jones documentaries, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, I get this. But now that I start tracing that line back, yeah, probably start with the History Channel. They
Yeah.
primed the pump. All right, yeah. Well,
Yeah. I've gotten away from them. I'll admit it. I've got the YouTube subscription, no commercials,
uh-huh,
so I can just go along and binge forever
yeah.
because there's some really, really talented creators out there making good videos on history. Well, any topic
You
you want
know,
nowadays,
we're
basically.
here. Let's do this. Go ahead, name a channel, then I'll name a channel.
The Y Files.
Ooh,
That's an easy one.
okay. I'm not familiar with them at all.
You haven't watched any,
No.
really? Yeah, he was actually he just was on Joe Rogan last month, and I will admit Joe Rogan and 3+ hour interviews are kind of not my
Okay.
bag, but that was one of the ones that I actually sat down and listened to him talk the whole
Yes.
time.
All right.
But yeah, the Y Files on YouTube. You should check it out. He's got some pretty cool stuff.
Yep. Very good. Okay, so are you familiar with Forgotten History?
Pretty sure I've seen a video or two. I don't think I'm subscribed to him.
They are. So he is.
Is that one good?
Not everything trips my trigger, but I enjoy a lot of what they put out, and I'm not exactly sure how what the oh, I'm trying to think of something that's less gay than saying command structure. The hierarchy tables, the command table, whatever. I'm not sure how that works, but the primary face of it for the first long while was this guy who was prior Marine Corps and prior Army, if I remember correctly, and old guy, 60s, 70s, I would guess, and 50s, 60s, whatever. But yeah, he would go into things and he would just get to the edge of certain things, and it's like that's interesting. And when I say certain things, I'm talking like, oh, who was it on Juneteenth? Is that the Rosenbergs? I think that's the Rosenbergs. So
Yeah.
he would talk about them. He would talk about the USS Liberty, and this is all interspersed in between him doing a special on Dan Daly or on Patton or whomever. And he's pretty good, bite-sized chunks, and he has
Mhm.
not. Well, I mean, frankly, it's probably just good marketing. He'll jump into the conspiracies and run through some of that. I'd say pretty even-handed. If you're going in there hoping for it to be TRS or whatever, then yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
And that's why I would definitely recommend you checking out the Y Files, because he presents whatever the topic is, whether it's, secret secret bases on the moon or whatnot. But at the end of the show, he kind of uh segues back to, but is it real? And
Yeah,
if he buys into it, he'll point out what he found and saying, this seems likely, this is totally, off the wall. And it's funny because he'll even talk to, I kind of get a bit when I'm not buying into it and they totally believe into it. But he says, I'm not going to just tell you something and be like, yeah, this is real, just for you to, agree with him. So,
right.
I like it, the even handedness of it a bit there.
I'll tell you who does them better than I would have expected, and frankly, I don't even know how he got onto that. But did you ever watch it? Sorry, did you ever watch any of Wendigoon's specials on history stuff?
Oh yeah, I subscribe to him for sure. I like some of his deep dives and whatnot.
Yeah, I
He,
mean he's what, like 25, and I think he does better with history than he has any right to do.
I think one of my favorite episodes, I'm sure you saw it, where he went to, what was it, the Brown Mountains and Appalachia with the lights and everything else, but he actually went on
Oh,
location and he was filming
yeah,
out there, and he did a real deep dive into it. That was good. I
I
get a
vaguely
kick
remember
about
that
him,
one.
and I get a big kick out of him and Papa Meat, doing their
Oh,
collaborations too. That's just entertainment and stuff, but
yeah, yeah.
but
That's
I
I'll give it to Wendigo. Now, I don't know that I would. I find Papa Meat funny, but I don't know that I could go do a video with him.
he's entertaining. It's
Uh,
I mean, his Rock of Love episode where he went through the first season. I mean, I'm watching it and just dying laughing.
okay.
Because you remember Rock of Love with what's his name, Brett Michaels.
Well, vaguely. Was this like a WB
Uh,
reality show?
I think it was. I don't even think they're around anymore. Not MTV, but the other VH1. I think it was a VH1
Oh,
show.
okay.
And he, at the time in 2000, I think 7 or whatever, dude's already 40 something years old, and he's like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm a rock star, and they bring in all the women. But Papa Meat's pointing out how, now look at this. This is 2000 era women, so they still have the back fat, baby fat. They're not all totally plastic surgeoned out, and
Yes.
he had a really good time with it. But another channel that I know I'll get crucified for this one by most by even bringing it up. But What If Alt History? You've heard of him?
Did you
His
bring your
social,
helmet?
yeah, his social media posting is kind of schizo here and there because he's
Yeah.
young, and so
Yeah.
he's kind of, and I get it a bit, because people are like, dude, you're like 22. But his videos were, I've watched more than a few, and I like some of his analysis for sure, especially on the
Yeah.
history stuff and political theories and how things go. I mean, I know he's talking about, well, last month we should already be in American Civil War 2.0 by now, but so
Right.
thankfully he was off on that. That's good. But
Yeah.
even in that video where he was talking about that, he brings up salient points on the conditions and
Yeah.
what's going on.
Well, and I think that's one of my frustrations with him. I think he does bring up interesting ideas at least. Often I think he has interesting points. Um, but I'll tell you, my big thing with him too is he's very open about his connection with Kurt Doolittle, and I'm still
Who is that? Kurt?
Kurt Doolittle, and then there was John Mark, and they blew up super quick on the whole how well John Mark was the one arguing that we're going to have another civil war, but then Kurt Doolittle was the proprietarianism maybe.
Oh,
Let's see, but then he's done some things that just
sketchy.
yeah, from my
Mm,
point of view, yeah, proprietarianism, Kurt Doolittle.
mm.
So he's interesting, but well, hey, here's one for you. Uh, over there on Twitter, and I'm going to mispronounce it, but Dialogian says, "What if all his videos are great?" So you got a supporter on there, and that again, I do think he makes interesting points a lot of times, but there is no but. You know, I some of his videos I'll take them and I'll be like, yeah, that's good, and then some I was like, that's kind of dumb. You know?
Well, and I still try to, of course, not get not get into that. I guess the sports ball mentality of with people of that's
Yeah,
my team entirely, and so oh
right,
wait, they threw an interception on that one, so I've got to dismiss everything they said. I'm not
right,
into that one too much. Like there's names I could bring up that I'm like, yeah, I read them all the time. I disagree with 9 out of 10 points every single time, but I still
right.
read them because they still have those kernels of, would make you go, oh, I get that. I understand that one. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's I'm thinking almost the opposite way too, and that there's guys that I'll read 100 things they say, and I'll agree with 95 of them, but there's five things there that no, I'm
Yeah.
not there. So, all right, well, I think we've done a pretty good job with the Fox and the Hound. You know, I think if you go in there and it's kind of like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien would be with the deep magic and the deep truths. Don't be an idiot and force feed your kids this. And sometimes there's time for that, but sometimes you just let them watch the movie, read the book, let it speak for itself. And a real quick one, actually, before we leave it, though, I will say this story comes up a lot. This idea of the conflict between groups and nature. I mean, what was the Lion King if not this over 120 minutes? And
Yeah.
then you Tarzan and Beauty and the Beast is on here, regardless of which side you're swinging with when it comes to John Doyle and him saying, Gaston was a hero and all that. What you can recognize is there's this question of what is nature and how do we interact with it.
No, it's very true. And it's, as you point out, I find myself constantly doing this where, you'll take a piece of art, whether it's pop culture, whether it's a novel, and just real quick tidbit. I started reading probably like, not to brag, but like 3 years old. I pretty much could read just about everything. So I was reading, the heavy books before 10, not understanding everything, of course, but still being able to read it. And so it's amazing to me to go back and look at, pieces of fiction, literature, and whatnot, and pull out those themes now, later in life, going, oh, okay, that's what they were talking about,
Yep.
And so it's really interesting to get the different perspectives as you go back to the same pieces of work.
I'll
Like
tell
as
you
soon as
that.
you brought, I was just gonna
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
as soon as you brought up, you're gonna talk about the Fox and the Hound, and we started talking about this and bringing up these themes and the characters and the representations. I see it entirely. I see the whole picture. Like, oh, you're right. Yep, widow, Amos, copper. Yep, nature versus nurture.
Hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, well, and like you said earlier, the whole tabula rasa, which it's interesting to me, hear we don't hear it by that name anymore. And we don't hear people saying, "Oh, they have a blank slate," because somehow they're trying to integrate the idea of they want it both ways. They want it to be that, oh, this group was tortured and humiliated, and this is their actions now are the result of how they were treated.
Mhm.
But then you can't expect anything more of them either. So, but yeah, there we are. I will say though, the idea of the deep magic and moving into that, I think, is a great segue into Ninja Turtles. Oh, let me pause there. What you were talking about, going back and rereading and seeing deeper truths. That's why I haven't yet touched Lord of the Flies again, because I read it as a kid and I loved it, and I suspect I'm not going to enjoy it nearly as much as an adult. I don't know.
I could, yeah, a few thoughts come to mind, and I'm like, yeah, looking back on that story, pulling out some themes that I can see now. Better off just keep the memories.
Yeah, right. Thankfully, I will say, now that we're turning this into a book stream, hey, go and read Richard Adams. He holds up. And so whether that's Watership Down or Shardik or the Plague Dogs or any of that, Adams holds up. But yeah, so anyways, we are jumping now into the deep truths of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1990 edition. Before we even get into the deep truths, what was that movie when you were a kid? Was it a big deal? Go ahead, tell us about it.
So, like I said, I think before we started, I was telling you how, uh, once again, thinking back to the memories of seeing it, I was a kid. The closest I can compare it to is the recent release of Minecraft, the movie, and how the reviews, they say it's an okay movie, but just all of the videos we were seeing of people in the theaters making it a party, enjoying being there, the experience itself. And I can totally take that as a parallel to when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out, because for myself and so many kids at the time, it was, oh my god, they're coming out with a live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like, it's not just like a long cartoon or something, this.
Well, that was even the. Let me see if I can find it and pull it up for you. That was one of the taglines in advertising. Was something like, "Hey, dude, this isn't a cartoon."
That's right. That's right. So I remember being in the theater, packed theater. I mean, it was, I think when I got my ticket, if I remember correctly, maybe 5 kids later, they were going, all right, we're sold out for this show. You have to come back, for the next viewing. And yeah, that atmosphere, that attitude in the theater was exactly like you see on what they've been showing with the Minecraft stuff. Now, we weren't, like tossing people around, and it didn't get too crazy, but it was still, it was a moment. It was, like that event. You could go to school and be telling everybody, have you seen it yet? It was talk of the town.
Yep. So I've got. I don't know if you can see it on your end, but I pulled up the movie poster. Hey, dude, this is no cartoon.
Yeah.
And I will say, from my perspective, dude, they pulled it off. Like they had this weird dance that they had to do with keeping it mild enough for children, because that was. Have you read any of the comic books?
Years and years ago. Yeah, I mean, I know that the tone, it was, not a bit more dark.
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
so they uh they got in there and they talked with Eastman and Laird, and it was like, there's no way for us to pull off what you did, because it's going to be PG-13 R-rated movie, which I believe the Last Ronin, which is the way in which they kept the IDW series during the past couple of years, I believe that it is actually coming out next year as an R-rated. I don't remember if it's live action or animated, but so they went in there, and not to mention, they wanted Jim Henson in there, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not doing the whole violence thing." He Here's one for you. Did you ever know what the Muppet Show was originally called?
No.
It was originally titled Sex and Violence, because there
Really?
was not Yes, because it was a play on words for Henson because there was none of that in the show, but he knew that it would get eyes on.
Oh wow.
And so he thought it was funny, but he didn't want his studio associated with crazy amounts of violence or anything like that. He didn't want to become another horror studio with the practical effects. So they're trying to get him online, and then they're trying to build a story. They're going different rewrites. There's some really good YouTube videos on the history of the movie itself. Anyways, let's fast forward to the movie itself, and I would say I think from a movie making perspective, yeah, maybe there's some stumbles, but the physical comedy, the verbal comedy, the gritty tone for a 10-year-old, I think they nailed it. And it's by far out of the Ninja Turtle movies. Let's take off the animated like Ninja Turtles versus Batman or really any of the animated ones because there's some decent ones in there. But in the live action movies, it's by far the best.
Yeah, for myself, I of course watched the first one that came out, and I know I watched the sequel, and I can't remember how long it was until they started, doing the Hollywood thing of coming out with the next sequel, the next one, the next one. But I kind of got off the train after the second one. But the first one, though, I agree with you that, yeah, is it perfect? No, of course not. But they captured the vibe. They definitely did. And, just even for that time in filmmaking to be able to pull off with the practical effects, they're I mean, yeah, maybe the goo itself might have been some animation, but, this wasn't just a CGI fest. Because I
Yes,
remember, as you say, with the videos of the making of the movie and how they did it, there's a lot of good ones out there that show the physicality for one of the actors
yes,
in the turtle suits themselves, and they're really proud of that because they're going, there's no wires on that. They're doing that. They were that
yep,
acrobatic.
yeah. So I I think it's great. I will also say, so I don't know, did you happen to see the thumbnail for this stream before you popped on?
No, I did not.
Yeah, no worries. So what I did with the thumbnail, I said that we were doing something on human biodiversity, and then I wonder if I could just pull that up. I probably can. Whatever. I won't take the time for it. But I said we're going to do something on HBD, and we're going to do something on the search for the father because I think one of the primary themes in this movie, one, why it was so good and why it holds up, is because it is in that long line of stories, miniseries, whether it's Lonesome Dove, whether it's Road to Perdition, whether it is shoot Gladiator. What else am I thinking? The Great Santini. It's all these movies where the the bulk of it is the search for the father, the hunt, the hunt for the
Mhm.
father, and whether that means physically, like in the case of turtles, whether it means let's say spiritually or existentially, like in Gladiator, like in Turtles, like there's this theme that runs through these movies, and I think that's one. I think it's very common, but two, I think they did a really good job of capturing that. And I don't know if it was on purpose or what.
Well, remind me in the first one, the original TMNT, Splinter gets kidnapped, right, by
The
Shredder
first movie, yeah,
because they come back and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's right. And
So there's that
like we said,
literal.
this came out. Yeah, so taking the father figure, and I recall that it was a lighthearted movie, but there were moments where you were going, you were scared. You were thinking, oh, are they going to be able to get him, or
Right.
are they going to save him? Because I mean, yeah, he's their dad.
He is their
So
dad. Oh man, yeah. And then there's times where he's sitting down. One of my favorite parts is how over 90 minutes, dude, they had the personalities, and the personalities were coming out, and he could take 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it was, with Raphael and be like, dude, your anger is It's something that's separating you from your brothers. It's something that you are going to have to figure out. You can, yeah,
No, you're right. The character development. I mean, for something based on cartoons and
yeah.
comics, you could almost say that set a bit of a good tone and standard for adaptation. Now Marvel
Okay.
brain is, but no, it kind of set a good tone on how you do this. You take the material seriously. Like for example, the Spider-Man, the first one that came out in 2002, that it wasn't treated like you weren't sitting there
The
going,
Tobey Maguire one.
yeah, you weren't sitting there thinking to
Yeah.
yourself, I'm just watching a schlocky movie that's based on, comics and stuff. It's like, no, it had plot and character development. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, people can laugh all they want, but no, that first one did. Like you just said, Raphael, they all had their own personalities, and it came out through the screen. Uh, who was the Rock? Who was like the leader? Was it that what it wasn't Leon, was it
Leo
Leonardo? Leo?
Leo was the leader. I think
Hmm.
there's an argument to be made though that Raphael was the rock of the group, and that's why him going down was such a big deal in the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, because he gets taken out for a third of the movie or whatever, and it's like, oh crap, Dad's gone, Raph's down. Like, what are we gonna do? And in the midst of this, they're building up this romance between Casey Jones and April O'Neil. And as a little kid, you're like, I don't know what's going on here, but I know something's going on.
It,
Most
it
of my
can't be.
experience with the Ninja Turtles. Oh, sorry, Arthur. Most of my
Oh,
experience
you're
with the
good.
Ninja Turtles. I forget the movie specifically, because I was an early 2000s baby. But I don't think it was the. Is this the '94 movie we're talking about?
It's the
1990.
1990, the very first
Yeah.
live action one.
So that would be like, shoot, 13 years where I was born. Most of mine was the cartoons
Yes.
that I experienced with. So seeing the live action Ninja Turtles actually kind of creeped me out as a kid. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
there's something off about this, and I don't know what. Hey,
Yeah, I just want
Well,
to say that we don't accept ageism in this space.
well, I mean, unless you're like very, very old and a boomer.
well, it was funny. Arthur and I were laughing about that because that was actually one of the taglines on the movie posters and in the ad campaign leading up to it getting in theaters was like, "Dude, this is not a cartoon."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was,
Then again, I think like sometimes I think we've kind of seen this with like a lot of the Disney remakes. Is that's not always like a great move to like move a cartoon to live action with
that's
CGI,
a really good point.
and
It
sometimes
definitely
it
takes a balancing
works,
act. I
but
was just
and
saying it
sometimes
takes
you
a
have
balancing act.
it does like because there's something about cartoons, especially older ones, like hand drawn, where there's a stylized, but it's still like it doesn't necessarily have to be realistic, but it's stylized to a point where you can understand what things are. And sometimes in moving that to live action, it loses a bunch of. My dog is really whining because he thinks I'm talking to him. Uh, come on, dog. Yeah, you can get up here, buddy. You can get up here. Yeah.
What kind of pup you got?
Oh, I have a Australian cattle dog. He's a chocolate healer.
Yes. Oh, they're gorgeous.
Very. He is a big old baby.
Yes. But that's an interesting point. It's why did okay, well let's step back because Arthur and I were jumping in and saying like, yeah, man, this thing works. This is great. What's your perspective? Do you think they dropped on the live action or do you think they got it?
I think it's the earlier cases, and this is the case with a lot of movies more generally, is at least with early attempts at things, it's better than what we see now because there isn't like near as much uh, attempt. Just seeing this more as like a cash cow.
Okay.
Uh, like I think that someone actually genuinely gave a damn gum about
Yeah.
the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie as opposed to a lot of the live action Disney movies.
Well,
Yeah.
and that was one thing I wanted to point out is the actor who played Casey Jones, I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's Elias Coteas. He's an actual actor. I mean, you look into his resume, the thin red line, man, Man on the Moon. He's an actual actor. So
Yeah.
I think that really brought it that they didn't just go grab guys off the street for these roles. So they had actual, people with
Like the
people who
latest
had,
Snow White movie where they just grabbed some
yeah.
random woman from the closest Disney studio, I guess.
I'll tell you what, do you guys know the biggest actor in the Ninja Turtles movie? I think he is. Actually, I'm going from memory here.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Corey Feldman. No.
Well, yeah, so he's in there, but I was actually thinking, what's his nuts? Sam Rockwell or whatever? Is that his name, Sam?
No, you're thinking of
Uh,
teenage. He was a teenager then. Jack Black.
oh,
No, no, he wasn't in Turtles. Hold on, let me pull up the IMDb.
Oh yeah, Sam Rockwell was in part one. Maybe I'm thinking of part two.
So he is Jack Black in there?
Yeah, he plays one of the little. Oh shoot, what?
Oh, is he one of like the news guys or whatever?
No, he's one of Shredder's.
He's one of the foot?
Yeah, he's like one of the lackeys.
Okay. Yeah, Rockwell's in there. He's the one who's like telling the kids when they're well. So that was interesting too, right? It's the whole not Peter Pan. Daggum, what's the other? Oh, Pinocchio. It's the whole Pleasure Island thing. He's like, whatever you want to do, you can do. You want smokes, we got smokes. And so that was Rockwell in the first one.
I didn't know that.
But
Hmm.
yeah. But other than that, I mean, it was Cacheas was in there, and then what the dude that went on to do Surf Ninjas. I'm pretty sure he's one of them that's in the suit. But it may be, but it's interesting because you'll find that sometimes in the movies where they've got uh, they've got guys that go on to do something, or guys that just for whatever reason their career doesn't pan out. But at least at that time, they were attempting to do something. And we're not talking like Hayden Christensen, like, oh, I'm in Star Wars, I've got to be so deep. Uh,
see, but
but
that's
it's
kind of the thing I like about Hayden Christensen, though, is he did Star Wars and then he just kind of left the world alone.
okay.
Like, just went
But do you,
and,
do you like his performance in Star Wars?
this is a Zoomer generation take, but I kind of grew up on the prequels. And
Okay,
while,
yeah,
like, yeah, it was kind of rough around the edges in the first Star Wars movie he was in at places, I also think that he's at least conveying how I think the character actually is.
okay,
Anakin is like a tortured kid who was a slave on a desert world who had to come back and watch his mother die and has like I'm trying to think of the word, but he has attachment issues, especially to the women in his life, to the point where he's not going to act very rational.
okay,
Like as like a 9-year-old kid, he's pulled away from his mother to go be a Jedi, to which
yeah,
he kind of wanted to, but also at 9 years old, he's going to be really able to make that decision. And
yeah.
then the next thing to a kind of motherly figure that he had at that moment was Padme. Like, because she's still significantly older than him to the point where you could look at it and be like, this is a motherly, older sisterly figure. And then he
Yes.
becomes like a
It hadn't
man.
made the jump.
Yeah. And then he starts to see her more as a love interest as he gets older. And the first time he meets her, there's someone trying to kill her. Well, of course, she's going to be kind of thinking, well, I can't let them take another woman I care about away from me,
Okay.
especially when it's like a more Eros type of love this time. So, yeah, he's not going to act rational. In fact, he's probably going to act kind of goofy given his like mental makeup there. So, him being kind of, for lack of a better word, cringy at times, I can be forgivable. I think it's forgivable when you look at the character in depth.
So do you think Christensen was do you think that was genuinely his his act of the character.
I think he helps portray that. I can't say for sure because I don't know what's going through his head, but like having
Yeah.
looked into some of the background on the making of the prequels, like that was a lot of George's intent actually. I think there's other channels that have like good kind of like, well, here's kind of why some of this stuff makes sense, and like yeah, the dialogue isn't always the best in the prequels. I think seeing what we have now, it's kind of put them in a new light.
Well, it is kind of a funny thing. Like if movie dialogue was realistic, how many times would we hear or how many times would somebody be at a loss for words?
And also, I mean, when you think about what Star Wars is a space opera
Okay.
at its core. Operas are supposed to be kind of overly dramatic to an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what George has called them, space operas. I mean, while I think the dialogue is much better in the original trilogy, of course, he had a lot of, I think, working within the frame of what he had. Like he's trying to set the stage for the earlier movies, later in the timeline, and showing how we got to this point. So Darth Vader being kind of a cold, emotionless
Super
husk for
cool.
most of the super cool husk for most of the original trilogy, before kind of coming around and showing that he has a heart in there. He's kind of like the Grinch in that respect, where his heart grew 3 sizes a day. The second Death Star blew up. Showing him as being a man who was once of a very burning passion, and looking at some of the expanded universe stuff from around the time. Like I would recommend like the Clone Commando books, even though they don't really touch on him. But there's a lot of material from around that time that shows like the Episode 3 novelization.
Okay.
It kind of points to how Vader was always kind of part of Anakin. He was, because of his fear of losing his mother, his fear of losing Padme, then his fear of losing Obi-Wan. It was always part of him that would come out because he had like severe attachment issues. He was willing to damn the whole galaxy to save those he loved. I think that kind of does bleed through in A, the actions of Anakin, but B, kind of Christensen's performance, where he's not going to think logically when it comes to people he loves. When he's talking about how he killed all the Sand People, the women and the children, because they killed his mother. That's just what he would do for anyone he cared about on a much smaller scale, and what he eventually does for the whole galaxy, because he fears Padme's life is in danger.
One thing I need to say real quick is that
Interesting.
I was entirely wrong. Jack Black was not in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was thinking of Demolition Man, the Stallone one from 1993.
Okay.
I keep getting that on
Totally,
my
I
YouTube
was way
shorts. I
off.
need to watch it. It looks good. There's like, that's been the case with me in movies lately, is it'll be on my YouTube shorts when I'll be stupidly scrolling through them because I'm bored. And then I'll be like, this is an old movie. I don't watch this. This is probably good. And it's always the same one from Demolition Man. It's this burger's made of rat.
Yeah, so
Rat.
I have not seen Demolition Man. Shame on me. I think I started it and I can't remember. But
What?
yeah, I don't know. So the way there's this weird Venn diagram of how I was raised, slash the military, slash my own eccentricities that all combine into what Panda has and has not watched. I have, here's one for you. And I'm on this. I am very aware of this. I have not seen T2.
You haven't seen Terminator 2? I was
I
watching
have,
Wow.
I was watching that stuff as like a
Wow.
9-year-old.
I have not seen Terminator 2. No, I wasn't allowed to watch it growing up, and then I haven't gotten there yet.
I was not allowed to like. I
So
was allowed to watch more stuff, and my big like you can't do this. It was like video games more than anything. It's like I couldn't play the Call of Duty Black Ops campaign without like the content filter on because my dad didn't want me to
Yeah.
hear the F word. But I could watch like Black Hawk Down any day of the week.
So there got to be a point about 16ish where as long as it was rated R for war violence or combat, I could usually get away with it. But yeah, there's like if you name Ren and Stimpy, I could not watch. The Simpsons, I could not watch. Terminator movies, couldn't watch. I didn't see Rambo till I was, I don't know, I think it was probably like pushing 30. So,
I haven't really watched much Rambo either.
Yeah, that one for me was Silence of the Lambs. I wasn't allowed, of course, to watch Silence of the Lambs. I didn't see that till I was in my
okay.
20s. But yeah, Demolition Man, it's one of those movies that you can just tell they were
Yes.
having fun filming it, producing it, creating it. I mean, the taglines, of course. I mean, it had Rob Schneider and Jack Black, and of course Stallone. Of course, I forgot her name now. She's been in everything from Speed to the Bird movie.
Yes.
Sandra
Okay.
Bullock. But you know, in the future, everyone eats Taco Bell. I mean, just blatant over the top,
Okay.
product
Unfortunately,
placement.
in
Which
the
at
here
the
and now, I eat
time,
a lot of Taco Bell.
it was product placement was, it was still tactful. Right.
Oh, this
Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
wasn't. This was just
It's like Brondo or
brought
something.
to you by Taco Bell.
The most
Yeah.
tactful product placement in the
But
history of
as
movies was the first Michael Bay Transformer movie, of course,
Okay.
where
oh yeah,
at least it was very funny to see a Mountain Dew Decepticon just pop into existence.
Oh, Lance.
circle back to what Wasp brought up, with Black Hawk Down. Have you ever read the book by
I
Mark
have. I
Bowden?
read that in middle school, actually, because I'd seen the
I
movie.
Yeah,
I
And I
have
went through a
not read
phase.
it. I'm trying to
Yes.
it's
trying to
really
figure
good.
out how much.
I went through a
Yeah,
phase of
we'll leave it at
after
that.
I'd
I have not
seen
read it.
Lone Survivor with my dad in the movie theater. I wanted to read the book for
Oh,
that.
we could do a stream on that.
We could,
I don't know that
but
I'm going to.
after having seen Lone Survivor, I read the book for that. Then I wanted to read more military books because I thought this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But the one that was like the best that I read from that phase, this was more recent actually, because I listened to it as an audiobook. I remember that distinctly, was Marine Sniper by Carlos Norman Hathcock. That was actually a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
American
Well,
Sniper was good too. Like, I think that gets kind of caught into the Lone Survivor kind of discourse to some extent. But
well, it does because there was overlap between the two of them and their personal lives to some degree. Slash, I'm trying to figure out how deep I want to go into this. There's issues.
yeah, but also I think at least the movie, there was a really good point, which is like this is an anti-war movie actually
Hmm.
to some extent, where it's like it's just presented without comment most of the time.
Yeah.
Like there's a game kind of like that they're censoring for its console release, and Ready or Not, it's like it's like a SWAT team simulator, and they're
Okay.
censoring a bunch of like the missions where it covers very heavy subject matter, like shootings of certain educational facilities
Yeah.
that you have to respond to. Where I think that's the most effective way to get people to show their genuine opinions on things like PTSD in the case of American Sniper. And as someone whose dad was a firefighter, I've seen the effects of it firsthand because he was a firefighter for 21 years. So seeing that portrayed not as maybe an old World War II movie would show it, where a guy's shell shocked.
Yep.
And he needs to be slapped by General Patton, but as like this is something that affects you throughout your everyday life. Is gonna appear in like very uncertain ways throughout your whole life from here on out.
There is, I'll tell you, probably the best because we did get to a point. Holy crap! There was a whole string of them there. There was, what was one that MTV did? Um, Stop Loss. Was that the one that MTV did? And then there was that
Over
brothers
there.
one with what's that?
Over there.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it didn't last that long. It was
Okay.
I mean, you could definitely tell it was a Hollywood production. The garish overproduction of the acting and whatnot. But I will say one quick thing on Black Hawk Down. You said you read the book, correct, Wasp?
Yeah, I read it.
And Panda, you saw the movie, right? Black Hawk Down.
Yes.
So let's put on my military hat here for a minute. What was really interesting about it, especially in that moment in the '90s, in Somalia, over there, supposedly saving the world again, but the soldiers getting drugged through the streets. That mission was a success, and so you had the duality of the political uh, implications and questions, and then what the military wanted to do, because the guys were ready to go back in. They grabbed their target, what they needed. Yeah, it didn't go as great as it should have, but just to pull out and say we're done, there was a very angry kind of feeling there of like, if this was this important, all this happened, and now you're saying, oh, okay, a couple eggs got broken. Now what are we here for in the first place then? So it was a real duality of the political question versus what the military guys wanted to do, and the book goes into that as well, really really well.
Yeah. So, oh man, that's been kind of the issue since Vietnam.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
I'm walking it back. I'm trying to figure out
yeah, no, I
how far
agree.
down
Like,
this road.
having gone and done like primary source research, like from the Vietnam era, it was mostly correspondence letters with a senator, uh, conservative Southern Democrat. There was a lot of servicemen who were writing him because they thought he would. They kind of viewed the Southern and more conservative senators as their best way to get what they saw wanted done. And I remember one from an Air Force technician saying, listen, I know we weren't told about this openly, but I think what we're doing in Laos and Cambodia with the bombing campaign is a good thing, because even if we are pulling out, that's fine. We should at least leave our allies on a strong footing. But even then, we
Yeah.
kind of did that half-heartedly and didn't end up working out.
Well, and
So
there's an easy thing to jump in there and say that Iraq 2003 is the son washing up for the father back in 91, 91, yeah, whatever, when Bush Sr. more or less left the Kurds out to dry. That's that's an oversimplification, but that's an easy way to paint it. And it really does come down to, are we trying to accomplish something, or are we, okay, let me walk it back. One of the, and we're way away from turtles, but one
Yeah.
of the most interesting and, let's say, fun conspiracies in my mind is that the U.S. really likes keeping its knives sharp. So regardless of the milieu, regardless of the purported reasons, one of the actual reasons, it it isn't the military industrial complex per se. It does go hand in hand with it, but the bigger reason than any of that is that we really like to keep our knives sharp. We want to know that our dogs can still bite. If that's the case, I wish they would just say it, which of course they can't. But then the other part is, you get to a point where there, if it's not that, I don't know that there was really a point to anything we did.
And the big thing on that is, and go ahead and give it a plug real quick on my Substack. I've written a couple of essays calling them stories from GWA, Global War on Terror, because I was involved on a deployment. We weren't walking the streets of Mogadishu, but we were doing Somali pirate interdiction operations. And even within the essay, I noted during the time how frustrating it was. We're over here, yeah, we're defending the maritime shipping lanes, keeping the gold in the banks and all that good stuff. But at the same time, you could see the pirates. You see them out there, and because of rules of engagement, yada yada, political situations, it was like, why can't we just take them out right now? We know exactly where they are. What are we
Hmm.
doing? It's like you said. That's a great analogy, metaphor of sharpening the knives. It just felt like the knives were going, kind of dull while we were out there. I mean, yeah, we did stuff, but it could have gone a lot further. It's like we're not solving this. We're
Right.
not, we're not tying a bow onto this. This is just triage.
I mean, yeah, and there's a point to be made where it's like throughout history, the global hegemon has had to maintain a global maritime security. But if we're gonna, I think we're kind of only half-heartedly accept the fact we're the global hegemon at times, and it's been so tempered by kind of liberal norms that if we were going to be the global hegemon, I don't know if we could morally justify doing what needs to happen for that to actually be the case. Like, if we wanted to, we could solve the Somali pirate problem in a day or a week tops, but we don't have the heart to do it because of the foundation and length of modern Western civilization.
Well, and we're going really big here, but you would almost think that the moral justification is the idea of the empire in itself.
Yeah,
If that's necessary for us to be hegemonic, we do it. But and as a southern man, you're very aware of this. That can lead to funny places.
very funny places.
So
So to
I
tie
don't
it
I
back
don't
into
like the
teenage,
idea. Oh yeah, right.
to tie this back into
Donatello is
Teenage Mutant Ninja
basically,
Turtles, the
it's
global American
basically just
empire is kind of mini Shredder.
yes, very much so. I was going to say that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are actually like the trilateral agreements, but
Okay,
Okay, then
go
there's
on.
actually
we're getting
four of
deep.
them. I was just like trying to pull something out of my head.
No, all right. Yeah. Well, so
Leonardo is the League of Nations.
Yes,
I really went with the easiest reading. I think it's the most blatant, but I also think it's one that uh, light, yeah, circle back 15 minutes or so ago. I think it is one that we see through a lot of popular media, and maybe it was very much a boomer and a Gen X thing, in that there was this search for the father. And this one wasn't necessarily, because now fathers are in and out of kids' lives, and that's not necessarily the father's fault. There's, we're talking the fallout from no fault divorce, so on and so forth. But what I'm specifically talking about is uh, GIs come home and they have the baby boom, and then the baby boom has what? Once you get out of rural areas, once you get out of the trades, I mean, what are these guys accomplishing that even comes close to that generation before them? And that's what I mean by the chase. The chase for the father is they're having to stack up. Oh, I don't know. I'm an IBM 3.0, and we're expanding into a new global market. It's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool, but how does that compare to your dad, who still walks with a limp because of his time in Korea, or what, right? Is so um, we became so civilized post World War II, and obviously there's Korea in there, there's Panama, there's some different things, but for the vast majority of guys, it all got flipped, and there was no outlet for masculinity in there, and that's sort of what I mean in the search for the father, and I think that's part of why some of these things, some of these pieces of media stack up so high, is because, boy, it'd be really nice if there was some dragon to slay. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about, like, oh, the dragon to slay is a woman's heart, or the dragon to slay is getting into an Ivy League school. I don't care about it. I want a literal dragon to slay, right? Like, who cares about all that? So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think there is kind of this search for the father. I mean, bring it to another like piece of media, and I won't go too deep into this, but you kind of see this in like King of the Hill, where Hank's whole kind of war, his way of service is propane and propane accessories. Like that's his service to his country. in a way. That being the block captain, that's where he finds his masculinity, and that's a kind of metaphorical slaying of the dragon. But I think it's kind of that more mundane day to day that kind of brought about this type of media that we're looking for, where people want to have more than that. This metaphorical slaying of the dragon, they want to find an actual dragon to slay. I mean, having played some older video games that were mostly made by guys of the boomer generation, kind of tailored by that to that effect, like the early Fallout games, where you're the chosen one or the vault dweller, and you're out to stop like a giant mutant army that seeks to take over the whole world and make it kind of a oneness, a unity of just like one race of super mutant beings. There's something very real to that in our modern day, but also that's an actual dragon, not necessarily a dragon, of course, because a dragon can be anything, but there's a real kind of look into that, and I think you kind of see this with. I was watching Mad Men with my buddy the other night, and I think there's this very real showcase of that phenomenon you were talking about with the main character and then the younger marketing guy. I forget the name of characters because I was having a couple glasses of bourbon while I was watching it.
I still need to watch it.
I need to as well, but the older character, he's a World War II vet, and then the younger character is, of course, not. He's like 26 in the 60s, so he would have missed World War II in Korea. To where his kind of dragon is the marketing industry. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. Like I see that. I see how a lot of the greatest generation and before the art from that is definitely different in a way. Where I think my favorite writer, William Faulkner, a lot of his works, while they kind of reach out there into the broader metaphysical concepts of things, they're also the stories themselves are more restrained and contained down to like individuals, the family level. If you want to get into his general philosophy on writing, you can read his Nobel Prize speech, which no one in Sweden could understand because he was from North Mississippi. And then you kind of look at this more fantastical, actual one, you go out and slay the dragon, like Star Wars, which we were talking about earlier. There's this whole, I think that's why it's so boomer coded that we are the rebels fighting an empire, man. Because they're trying to find a dragon to slay, even when they kind of are the dragon at this point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Actually, Arthur, you got anything? I don't want to jump in and cut you off.
Oh no, I was percolating a few thoughts in relation to the different conflicts post World War II, but no, go ahead.
Yeah. Um, I jumped in. I jumped in too early, and now I forgot my train of thought. Uh, let's see. We were talking about Star Wars, and that's what it was, right? So it's like, yeah, we got to be the rebels because so John Slaughter he had posted something and it was whales and it was orca and like mothers being involved in like it was good stuff. Everybody subscribe. John, you probably already are. Regardless, so what my thoughts on that was that there is this energy attached to the boomers and that they always have to be fighting something because they're if they don't have an enemy, they have no energy to what they're doing. Because now we're really getting into it. And so I don't know where everybody's at, metaphysics, whatever. But sin sin cannot sustain itself. It runs out of energy. And so for something to be sustainable, it has to continue like it's the basics. It has to have energy that continues moving. And so that's why it's necessary for them to always frame themselves as the rebel, as as something that has the energy to continue fighting. Because without a fight, they die. Because it's so simple. They are Duttonese Morgoth spiteful mutants that can't just be sustained in life, in working the horse, in plowing, in taking care of their children. And so there always has to be this external fight. All right, I'm done for now.
Well, I mean, and imagine, what was it a few weeks ago? The No Kings protest added with the ICE protest with down with the page. It was an everything protest pretty much. But one of the most striking videos pops
Sorry.
out. It was on social media. Probably saw it on Twitter. Did you see all of them coming out of a senior home with their
Yes, yes,
with their little king hats on with the walkers, and it's fight the power, and it's going. Is this just like a memory trip to you back to Woodstock, or is this
yeah,
back in on your university days or something over on the East Coast? Fighting the power, because this is sad, really sad to watch.
Yeah.
right.
My grandparents, being boomers, they were more the Merle Haggard, Okie from Muskogee type of boomers where it's like, we have jobs. I kind of got my wife, who I married when she was 16, to take care of, and my son. I don't have time for any of this hippie stuff. I gotta go work type boomers. So
No, you're exactly right,
that's
Wash. Like, sorry.
that's like the big divide I see in the boomer generation is you have like the Woodstock hippie generation, and you have the Okie from Muskogee generation, basically.
Yeah,
No,
well, and they jump in, Arthur. Jump in.
no, I was going to say exactly one of my biggest pieces essays that it went pretty good. I mean, I did give it a heck of a hook for title "Boomers Destroyed America," but I did when I went into it with the preamble of saying, of course, this isn't everyone from 1946 to 1964. This is a subset of people, and I can recall asking family members back in the day, like, hey, when you're a kid, hey, so in the 60s, were you a hippie? And I would get the response of, no, I was working. I was raising kids. Your dad was in the oil field. And that, as Wass says, it's totally correct that there is that kind of separate Merle Haggard versus the Jane Fonda generation of that. And it really just kind of comes out when these protests pop up and you see people trying to relive the, fight the power days, and others just looking over, shouldn't you be with your grandkids right now?
Yeah.
Why are you booking another Disney cruise?
Funny enough, my
Well,
boomer grandfather, the one I still have, he every time I mention Jane Fonda, and he has like, if you know the quote
did he tell you the
about,
POW story?
he did, but I also learned
Yeah.
about that one in my course on Vietnam that I took that was really good. But my favorite quote, and he kind of echoes this sentiment from John Wayne of, if we see someone with a North Vietnamese flag, we should just shoot him. You can kind of see where he connects that one to Jane Fonda. At least you should get
But
the trader's price.
well, it's that, it's Shay, it's Lennon, it's all of it. But then I think, at the end of the day, is it less so much generational as it is city versus rural? Yeah, there is that suburban divide, and we'll just call it the borderlands, I guess. But at the end of the day, does it come down between those who either are in the rural areas or understand the needs of the rural areas versus the people who have the time to dick off in the cities?
That's a very fair question as well, but also I think you could may not necessarily be confined to cities like you say, where there is the suburb, and I think those people tend to come out being the more successful of the revolutionaries within their generation because they have a more stable upbringing than those in the cities. I mean, we look at like the biggest leftists in power these days, like Nancy Pelosi, for example. Her father, very well off mafia associate, who and yet she's still in politics, able to at a very high level, even though she's from that kind of boomer generation and pushing revolutionary ideals. I think that there's while the vanguard might be the ones we traditionally associate, those more suburbanites that kind of get tracked into it, being a generally higher quality, end up being the more long-term sustainers of that movement.
Yeah, well, here's something funny to tie it back to Ninja Turtles. If you guys remember in that movie when so all the conflict more or less goes down in the city. They escape to the rural areas. That's where they heal. That's also where they meet Splinter in the fire, and he's coming out and he's talking to all of them, and he's like, do the right thing. I'm proud of all of you. And I don't know if that was intentional. I mean, it was intentional, right? Because basic framing in a film is going to have wide open shots to ease the tension, where there's no chance for the shadows to be collapsing and making, or not collapsing, but scrunching and making somebody claustrophobic. Slash, there's nothing popping around a corner, not even in the woods, but wide open fields. And so they're at this farmhouse, there's wide open fields. They're able to relax. They're able to heal. And then, but just a fun fact, which isn't particularly in the movie, but do you guys know where that was filmed?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
No.
South of the Mason-Dixon line in beautiful Wilmington, North Carolina.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, a few other spots in North Carolina, but it was Wilmington primarily out there. They only got a few shots in actual New York City,
neat.
but yeah, I think
It kind of shows like when we think of the countryside, at least in more traditional art, it's like the fertile lands of rejuvenation in a way. At least we see that in kind of like mythology, where
yeah,
like some of the most respected, like of the Greek gods, for example, or even in like other mythologies, um, are like the fertility goddesses as well. You see like fertility totems. There's this god of rejuvenation of a new life that kind of the turtles are seeking there, to be rejuvenated after all the conflict.
yeah. Otto, what you got? I see you down there.
I haven't heard him speak. I'm not sure if it's
Oh
fully
yeah,
in.
no, sorry. I
Oh, you're good.
I was supposed to be back. So the rundown is I am actually in Eastern time right now, and I was out eating somewhere, and I thought this was going on Central time, but also I got attacked by a bee
Mhm.
and just kind of got distracted. So I checked my phone. I was like, "Oh shoot! I better run back to the hotel."
Now, was
Welcome
it a
to the.
bee or a wasp?
It actually might have been a yellow jacket.
Okay,
So I
that
guess neither.
counts.
It
Worst
was a
of both
dragonfly.
worlds.
All I know is I bumped a plant. Well, I said bumped the plant. I was sitting by a plant and I felt something crawling on my arm and I just thought it was a fly. And I was like, oh, if there's a fly on my arm, whatever. And I swipe it and then it starts like trying to attack me and stuff. And I was like fighting it out in the street. Like I almost pulled a gun out
Oh
on it
my
and
God.
shot it.
Street fighting man over here. Right?
I'm just that was a joke for everybody listening. Otto was joking.
Well, I mean, it was real. Yeah, I went to
No,
go get
not
into
that.
the fight.
Talking about shooting the gun.
Yeah.
Listen, that bee had a
No, I
weapon.
was,
It was pulling a gun too.
yeah, it was armed and dangerous. I was defending myself.
It had a
Very
Stinger
well.
missile.
And it sounds like the cops are after somebody in the background. Goodness.
Well, okay. I wonder if somebody had a movie going or something. So, all right. Well, very good. So, have you heard much of what's been going on, brother?
No, I have not. What's happening?
Tangents
Oh,
mostly.
nuts.
We're breaking down the latest Snow White movie. What was good, what was bad, what we thought they should have added.
Should have had more BBL.
Goodness gracious.
All right. And on that note,
We,
this is a great stream.
we don't want to see. We don't want to see a skinny ass on there. You know what I'm saying? We want a big old ass. We want to see a big old ass. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't know. Otto,
I don't know.
look
I
at
don't know
me.
this man.
Do I? I have no idea what you're
Like,
talking about.
we won't shout
Have
him
we
the
talked
thing
about
back on us,
Fox
man.
and
You know
Hound
what I'm
yet?
saying?
Because that was my
Later.
expertise tonight.
Well, we did. You want to go back there, Arthur? Oh, and
We
don't let me keep y'all. I mean,
Oh, it's no
this
problem. I
this was
have
at
nothing
your
to add.
as you had the time. But yeah, we can go back to Fox and
Hey,
Hound.
this is for the viewers.
Yes.
But what's for the viewers, Otto? What you got?
Oh man.
No, I don't know. I'm just saying this is for the viewers.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So I remember watching it as a kid a lot, and it kind of making me cry because I was like, this kind of gets into a bigger point where it's kind of this dispelling of the boyish notion that despite our natures we can get along. My boyish notion was that I want to see Todd and Fox get along and be friends and live together. But I think it was kind of Todd and Copper. I want to see Todd and Copper get along because of my boyish notion, the one they themselves kind of have to dispel that they can live together.
That they
Friends
what? I missed
forever.
that last sentence.
That they can live together despite their
Yeah,
natural proclivities.
right.
And I remember later in life, my aunt, who I don't really talk to anymore because she's kind of a niche, saying that movie has a really terrible moral. And at that time, thinking on it, that's a really good moral. Of, despite the things that make it to where we can't coexist together, like side by side, that we don't necessarily have to be hateful or wish to kill each other if we do this in a proper way with the proper respect for each other and have clear lines. There's a very, and when I was researching the movie, it was the one with the last of like the old Disney heads really involved. The ones that would have actually worked with Walt Disney, and I think that really shows because it has a very actual good moral as opposed to some of the later animated Disney films. Looking back, like Beauty and the Beast, where it's basically just radical feminist liberation, even though Gaston is actually the good guy in the whole movie.
That's a good point that Wasp brings up right there. That the movie was made with, I can't remember the name of what Walt Disney called the original animators. I think it was called like the old guys or something like
Right.
that. But
Well, if it was a,
they didn't.
I can't remember
They
if it was
didn't.
Glenn Keane or whatever. Sorry, I'll put it over.
I was just going to say that they didn't. Just as Wasp said, they didn't end it off with, Copper and Todd opening up their own, boutique store together and living happily ever after, making custom cakes for everything. And it was understood that hey, there's different ways, there's lines here, there's a reason for those lines. Copper needs to go back to the woods, that's where he belongs. Todd hang around with the old guy chief, whatever, on the porch. But still, they didn't once again force it in like we see over and over nowadays in cinema, not just in Disney but in many other productions. Of this is how this goes, and it's because we like it to go this way, even though it has no semblance of reality.
And I mean, like,
And
even
that's
then,
the
you could get the sense from the ending of the movie that Todd and Copper were happier and better men for it, having accepted nature, having
I
accepted
think
the
that's the big one is,
personality.
yeah, I don't know that they were happy as much as they accepted what their proper place in that world was. and it was a realistic setting.
And even then, I
And
would say that an acceptance of nature leaves you happier than a rejection of nature.
yeah,
Maybe not.
I
Maybe
think
not
you're
in the.
right.
Maybe not like in the short term because we're seeing
Right.
them like directly after the events, but in the long term, it's a better and being out of line with the natural kind of leaves you in a state of we see this with like modern transgenderism, of course, where it's a rejection of the natural,
Yeah.
and we see that that leaves you in mental odds with reality that eventually leads you to destroying yourself.
Well, even then, I mean, all right, you open Pandora's box. I mean, it's the entire LGBT blah 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 movement. There's no functional way. I mean, there is no normative way for them to reproduce. And so we see all of these crazy issues and these crazy roundabouts of surrogacy and in vitro and adoption. And so now there are children that may or may not be related to one or, excuse me, to either of the parents, but are now in homes that it just doesn't make sense. No child normatively is going to grow up with two dads, two moms, whatever. And there's a reason for that because in nature that doesn't work.
And I don't
It's
think we have many studies on this since it's a very new phenomenon, and we shouldn't have to have studies on this.
right.
But I want to see in some years, because I'm sure the few they have, they've handpicked the few not very. I don't want to say things will just demonetize. Uh, Perverse homosexual couples who have adopted or they pick the few who may not be doing unspeakable acts upon them
Yeah.
that they can find that I would like to see long-term studies into how these kids turn out, especially the surrogates. I think that we'll see those kids have a host of mental issues
Yep.
as we go forward. And I remember there was a story of the one in California where she came out a girl and they were trying to force the mother to have an abortion. Like, the fact that they would have a girl is so unappealing to them that they would rather kill it.
Yeah. Well, let's go back 100 years. How in the world did a young boy have two men in his life? He had it because his mother had died, either giving birth to him or whatever. She got ran over by the horse. Dad, grandpa, all those people, they have memories of his mother. His mother is still living with him. And so there's, even though he doesn't have access to his mother, and the same way with fathers in war, in the mine, whatever. Even though he doesn't have access to them, he still understands the picture of what was going on. And so yeah, he has his own things to deal with, and that he is literally chasing his mother, chasing his father to some degree. But at the same time, he was still in a normative, functional, functional within nature relationship with those around him and with his existence. And that's not something that's being achieved with those kids that you're mentioning.
Yeah. I mean, like, we see how this process is done. It's one of the most barbaric things I can think of, where the child is ripped from the mother's breast immediately after birth to be given to two men that has no relation to most of the time. It may be biologically related to one of them, but even then, it's like it's missing a whole half of it that it will never have any connection to. It's half a person at that point in terms of its development.
And to add to what Ross was saying a moment ago on the implications in the future of the anger and whatnot, I actually wrote another essay called, this doesn't have a happy ending for everyone, because you have to think about it. You think back to your childhood, anyone who's kind of just had just a regular childhood, think to yourself, there almost always was something that your parents had you do that maybe you didn't want to do it, whether it was piano lessons, whether it was they wanted you to get better at some activity. And even, decades later, you'll still think back to that. Now, of course, you don't have malice in your heart over it, but you'll still kind of say, "Oh, I can't believe you made me go to piano lessons twice a week for, 2 to 3 years or something." Now, I bring that up to say, imagine this, especially for the issue of, child transgenderism. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years. I mean, once the kind of the fad goes away, and you have these, irrevocable changes done, there's no long-term studies on what the medications will do. And there's definitely, there's going to be those who are going to be very mad with a lot of hate in their heart for what was done to them, or it started on them at 10 years old, 12 years old, and then they find themselves into their 20s where everyone else is doing the normal things of finding a life mate and, starting families, or just, living within the bounds of normality. And they're going to be looked at, and it's going to cause problems. It's just, you, like I said, you're not even going to go how many problems it could cause, but you just got to imagine someone with that much anger walking around as a young adult with these irrevocable changes to them, and it can't be things that can't be undone.
I mean, yeah, it's very true. When you, I think the whole goal with it was to create this kind of permanent revolutionary class, and I think that's going to kind of backfire to an extent because you didn't build it of people who would have really any reason to go forward at that point because they're missing so much basic human drive. That's why we see such high rates of suicidality and suicidal ideation in them, is because you have taken something so fundamentally human away from them and tried to make them against nature. It was kind of this ultimate, I would say, Marxist attempt to fight nature. Like,
Well, yeah, I think functionally what you're saying makes sense, but I don't know that formally that's what was going on. Arthur and we were both in the service at a time where it was don't ask, don't tell before it swapped over to but what is it now? Whatever you want, I guess.
I mean,
I
just
was gonna say
about
I don't even know if they have a formal name for it, but when they trotted it really was a shift in the public, not just with military guys, but in the public itself to say, we're just like you. We just want to get married. We just want to have a relationship. That's all. Now that yes, I think obviously there were people that they knew where this was going to go and they're happy about it. But there
yeah,
was there
the
was
thing is,
also a group
though,
who
I
go
was
ahead.
watching Aaron McIntyre's more recent podcast he did with the professor from Boise State. It, he talks about how a lot of them really knew, but they also knew that the average American wasn't going to go along with the LGBT stuff because of how perverse it was in the 70s and 80s. I mean, we see a really, even to this day, where there's a part of the population that's naturally repulsed by it, that's never going to accept it. And that's even kind of started to grow again in Gen Z, where it's like the first generation in a while that has like a,
Well, the thing about it that I find interesting, and I was over here in a coworker at work, and they talk about this, is that it's weird to see the divide of some people. It just gives them the complete disgust. It's it's that stat about it arouses the same feelings as if you were to stare at like maggots. And then the other people, it seems like a lot of it's women. They really just don't mind it, and I just find that fascinating. I just wanted to say that how strange it is that one half of the population thinks it's just totally disgusting, and the other half it's like just a nah, like their body, their choice.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, even in my like workplace, where the two most liberal are, I don't know if he's gay himself, but uh, there's a ginger white fellow, and then there's the millennial white woman, uh, who are the most liberal. To where I don't really know how to quantify it, but there's definitely a point to like physiognomy and within that, to where you can see even like my black coworkers, whenever they'll get really progressive, is like, I don't know about that, man.
Otto, is that your mic? Are you in a Waffle House right now or something?
No, actually that's not my mic. I've had my mic on mute.
It's not mine.
Oh, okay. No, it just sounds like a crowd in the background or something.
I've been making sure to turn my PC audio down. I'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, how did we? Oh, I was going to say, how did we get here? But I guess it was
It was
it was
nature.
going against nature. Yeah.
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 Can we fight nature? And I think that's, man, I tell you, I think The Fox and the Hound was a great movie on that. I think it
Oh
did
yeah.
it. It is well, what I say earlier. It's baby's first Substack article or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like when we were talking about it in the group chat. You were like, "That was your first taste of your people's forge."
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's a good one. It's a good one. We were talking about the trivia about it earlier, whether it was Kurt Russell or it was Mickey Rooney. Is that who it was, Arthur?
Yeah, Mickey Rooney.
Yeah.
That's
When I
wild.
was looking at the voice cast, I was like, I did not know it was the stack.
Yeah. Well, that was it's wild. You go back. I think Aristocats. I think was Zsa Zsa Gabor, and then I think there was some famous Brits in there. Uh, oh, what's the name? The guy that was the rooster and Robin Hood. He was a well-known singer. They're out there.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of like that Tropic Thunder movie. It's for a serious Vietnam War movie, it's got a pretty all-star cast for a
I
minor
wouldn't
movie.
consider it a serious Vietnam War movie, but yeah, fair.
I was wondering that's a deep comedy there.
I was waiting for that. I was like, I was gonna try to, yeah, like man, this movie's got Robert Downey Jr. Who else is in it?
I was a sous
It was
chef. I was
Roger
a
Miller
sous chef
who
down in
played
New Orleans.
Isn't
Rooster.
Vince Vaughn in it too?
Yeah, I think maybe in a
Ben Stiller.
Uh,
Who's the black guy in it? The real black guy, not the fake one.
What were you saying?
In
there,
Tropic
buddy?
Thunder.
No, that was Brandon T. Jackson.
Okay.
He was
the best guy in that movie was Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah.
That was just
Tobey
the
Maguire
best.
was in it. I did not know that.
Well, we could go as far as to say that the Robert Downey Jr. character was transracial.
He was.
He was also gay.
Which is also it's one that's been beat to death, but yeah, that is one way to go. And there's Rachel Dolezal and all that, and that one has never taken off because they know it doesn't count.
Because they
You
kind of
you
understand
can't
there's
be
something deeper there.
you can't be transracial. You can't be transgender. You can't. I'm gonna blow up my channel tonight.
No, but it goes down to the simple fact: either you're a Texan or you're not. That I mean,
So what you're saying is either you're gay or you're from Texas.
oh Lord.
Well, I mean, we could go.
No, I was just
into
thinking.
the
I was
whole
thinking
nother
back.
debate
We
on that.
Steers and queers.
I was thinking back to back as a kid. We one of my childhood friends. I think he originally they were from New Mexico or something, but he moved into my town and started school around like the third grade. And years and years later, he's like, "Yeah, I'm from Texas." Like, no, man, you're from Hobbs, New Mexico, dude. You're not a Texan. He's like, "I've lived here for 30 something years." Like, sorry, don't count.
It is interesting. Oh man, that's
There
a
was a good King
stream
of
in
the Hill
itself.
episode about that too, where he was Yankee Hanky, where Hank was. They find he was born in New York because his dad was trying to kill Castro in a Yankees game.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. He was like, "Oh, I'm not a
I
Texan."
can't even drive like a Texan anymore.
Yeah, there's a. I gotta figure out how to do this without doxing myself. Where I'm at now, it is not unusual for people to see my last name and say, "Well, you ain't from around here, are you?" And it's like, "Well, you're right, but let me grease the track because then I could take it back and I could go back several generations, and you would not believe how doing that just makes life just a little bit easier." So it's
So what you're telling us is you live in Compton.
yeah, we'll go with that.
Compton,
But I
crazy
thought,
mother trucker named Panda.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man, he saw my goat. He saw my
I'll tell
goat.
you what. So I made that name a long time ago, and I just kept using it, and it went from being that I had mixed ancestry to now the common assumption was that I had yellow fever, and neither of those are true. If I could go back in time, oh well.
It sounds like one that Xbox would auto generate for you, honestly.
Was that?
It sounds like one that Xbox would auto generate for you back in the day
Oh, that's funny.
when you were signing up for a Xbox Live account
Right?
on 360.
Yes, and they'd give you the stupid names like Clenched Dirt, like 420, 69.
Funny enough, that is my email.
I don't
But
think
I
they
figured
did
that out.
that name.
That's how I ended it because I knew no one would do this. It was
Yeah.
42060.
Like, Otto, that's too cool of a name. They wouldn't give you that.
Nah,
They gave me. I don't remember what it was because it could dox me possibly, but it did give me like a weird like dead flowers or something like that one time. It was like this makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that was here. I'll age dox myself. Do you guys remember Xbox before Xbox Live? And the way you could have wireless because who was that? Who was that terrible accessory producer?
You talking about the LAN party stuff
Well,
where like you could basically
you could do LAN automatically with Xbox, but no, I'm talking. So you could have Mad Cats.
yeah,
So
Mad Cats.
I'm pretty sure it was Mad Cats that came out with a wireless setup. So you would plug into the Ethernet port on one Xbox, and then you would plug the other adapter into another Xbox, and there you go. You would have wireless. But yeah, this is before live or any of that.
Yeah, I missed all
That
of
was
that.
before my
I
time.
mean,
I think the oldest
like I
Xbox
said,
is older than me. So
I think it was. Well, 2001, because it went
it's 2 years
Dreamcast,
older than me.
PlayStation 2, and then I'm pretty sure it was 2001 was because Dreamcast was 99,
yep.
and then PS2 was 2000, and I'm pretty sure Xbox and GameCube both were 2001.
I didn't get an Xbox 360 till like 2 years before the Xbox One came out, so I really didn't game a lot in my early. I mean, I had like an old PS2, but I didn't really like
Yeah.
actually start seriously gaming until like middle school and
That's
high
my
school.
earliest console memory.
I had
Besides
a,
going on vacation to Arkansas, we had a cabinet there with an original Nintendo in it.
Yes.
But I was more interested in going down to the river and fishing for trout. We're watching Star Wars on VHS tape on the old TV with my grandfather and cousin.
oh shoot! Don't get me started on this VHS tapes. I remember when I was a little kid, I was over at my grandmother's, and I guess she had a VSH VS, VSH tape in for the Ghost in the Darkness. And all I remember is the scene where they built like the watchtower thing, and they just sat there watching that
So my
railroad.
paternal grandfather, before he died, he had a whole bookcase, and this is a very big bookcase, the type you had to bolt into the wall. In fact, it's in my room now, and it was filled with VHS tapes. This thing is like 8 feet tall and about I can't give you a wide estimate, but it's very big. It was filled with VHS tapes. And I don't know what my grandmother did with them, but if she got rid of them, I was going to be very mad. And I think something happened. She just got rid of all these old VHS tapes. And we don't even have a VHS tape player. But I'm thinking, like, this could be the next, like, thing, man. Like, people are going to want to get the original Star Wars on VHS tape one day.
So the interesting thing about VHS and vinyl both is that they degrade every time you use them.
Yeah.
And that's the real bummer. And
But
so
he
the
didn't
cool
really
thing,
use them. Because I think he was having the same understanding of, I'm collecting these, man.
interesting. I was gonna
So
say the cool thing about vinyl is that like a lot of times they would be this trifold thing, and you could open it up, and they would have album notes or they would have pictures from the tour or whatever. But with VHS, most of the time, because it was so expensive to put deleted scenes or whatever on there, because you needed the extra tape, they most of them didn't have anything. And now that we're digital, like there was this beautiful time where you had all the deleted scenes and all that. It just doesn't happen anymore.
yeah, so I think, like, yeah, he was doing it for like the purpose of collecting them. So he did that with like the Beanie Babies back in the day. Like he
How'd
like
that work
collected
out for
things.
him?
Well, I don't think he got really serious into it. But yeah, a
Yeah.
couple. He was like, hey, maybe these will be worth something. I don't know. If not, I can give them to my grandkids. That'll be neat.
Well, I've got an uncle. He's been collecting Hot Wheels for years, and there's certain ones that he won't mess with it, or like uh, he's not going to give those away. But it's gotten to the point where he has so many in his house that he just gives them away to grandkids and great nieces and great nephews or whatever. At this point, he's like, "Here, I don't need this one. Have fun."
I think that's a more like authentic and nice form of collecting than the obsessive type of collecting, honestly. Because it's like, hey, I'm not so emotionally attached to this that I'll make irrational decisions and get,
Yeah.
and I'm actually doing it
I thought,
with like the intent of, hey, if my kids want it or my grandkids want it, well, then I'm happy.
Panda, I thought that story was about to take a dark turn with the uncle. Like I was at my uncle's house and I saw a VHS and I figured it was the Goonies and I pop it in. It wasn't the
Okay,
Goonies.
so
It was
I do
Goonie,
have that
but it wasn't the
story.
Goonies.
I do have
Oh,
that story,
God.
but it was not with my uncle. So
Might as well put some baby oil on it and call it a Diddy party if it's going to be something like that.
okay, so my grandparents they had this amazing house where it was this weird ranchish thing that had different levels and an attic, and it always smelled like my grandfather's pipe tobacco. And they had an old typewriter and stuff in their library. It was crazy. I loved going to it because there was always and they lived on 3 acres, which as a kid was like, oh, I'm in the jungle. It was amazing. So we would go there, and there was like they had a big library, and I was in there one day, and I don't know, I was old enough to know. I feel like I was 12ish, 13ish, and I'm poking around in their library, and I pulled out some magazines to see because they had National Geographic, whatever, and this was the big ones. It was both Playboy and Playgirl. and I pulled them out,
Classy though. Classy.
and I was like, "Oh, holy crap!" Now, for whatever reason, my mom, or maybe both my parents, were in the library at that time because I was like looking for something to find them because I was always in there typing on the typewriter and writing stuff or whatever. They're doing something on the thing that, so I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And my mom was like, "Put us away, put it out." And the next day, like a naughty young man, I went in there and they were all gone. I couldn't find anything. But that was
I'm just laughing that. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at you're going. They had Playboy and Playgirl. I'm like, they had Grinder Playboy as well. What the?
I don't know, man.
I mean, options.
Like I don't
Grandma
know if
was a
Crazy.
freak.
well, right? And that's the thing is that I don't. If I had to guess, if I had to guess, my grandfather had them, and then either as an acquiesce or as a doorway into greater passion. He had gotten her one, and she would have been like, "I'll put that away." So dirty pervert. But,
These are family heirlooms.
yeah,
I
but
got them for the articles, man.
that was it. Well, okay. In fairness, in fairness, they actually did have good articles.
Oh yeah,
True.
that's very true. Like
I mean,
And the interviews were good too, because I mean they
there
were
was like
pretty
a
straightforward
good John
interviews
Wayne
with.
Playboy interview.
man, I remember reading one when I was over in Iraq, and I can't remember if it was a write up on the war at that point or what it was, but I was like, "Damn, that was." Now I understand why they say that.
Well,
Yeah.
there is something very aristocratic about old Playboy, where it's like, I like boobs, and B, I like good thought provoking interviews. That's a
They,
very
it's a
aristocratic.
simulacrum.
Yes, it's the duality of man.
Okay.
Hey Panda, did you see the latest comment?
No, I haven't. Where on the simp is that?
Yeah,
Let's see.
a truly exceptional halo.
Yeah, right.
We're talking to Panda Jesus in the barn tonight.
Oh, God forbid. Can you imagine? We're all screwed.
I just need one G.
Oh man.
Mo
Well, I
and
was screwed when I came out of the room, but I mean, some of y'all had more of a fighting chance.
This one's even better.
the stack.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's a gunshot too.
What's that?
Man.
I thought I heard a gunshot, but I think looking back on it, somebody slammed something,
I hope that's it.
or somebody got slammed into.
I don't know. I know there's fireworks going off out here, so I don't think
Listen,
they're loud enough to get through the.
if you know the old song, "We Got to Get Out of This Place," Otto, I think you probably get out of this place.
Man, I'm telling you what, I'm ready to do John Wick on some people if they pull up. They pull up for a pop, 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 pop. I'm put that 9 mil on them. No ice.
I will say, I think kids are always trying to do better than their parents, and I think my parents were probably tighter on me because of the lives they lived. If that
That's actually fair. That's exactly how my parents were. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was like threatened as like a little kid, like we're gonna spank you if you misbehave, and it's like I never planned on misbehaving.
yeah, right.
I got
Hey,
you got to go sit in the corner because we know you're a little spastic who wants to run around.
let me know if this is just me though, but does it seem that you get to a certain age, into your 20s or so, and these family stories just start popping out that you're just amazed by? like for example, I remember one time I was talking to my sister. I was probably, I think, probably 25 at the time or whatever. I don't even know how it came up, but she basically said something like, "Well, Dad hadn't gone to jail in a long time," and I'm going, Dad went to jail. What? You can't just stop there. How did Dad go to jail? And she tells me this whole story about way back in the day when the folks were in their 20s or so. They went out to a honky tonk and afterwards went to a diner to eat. And she said, "Yeah, they were there with another couple, and Dad went to the bathroom, and while he was in the bathroom, one of their friends came over, and a guy, and just sat down next to Mom and started talking to the couple. And said Dad came up and looked at him and said, 'Comfy fella.' And before the guy could react, he just started beating the crap out of him. And she's telling me like, yeah, he was in jail, and the guy's in the other cell, and he's telling him like, hey man, we're going to tell him we were just playing, right? We were just playing around so they could get out of jail." I'm going, when did this happen? She goes, I don't know, 1962. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, my granddad, that he told me one time about how they went to him and his cousin went out of state to go look at a car, and when they were looking at it, some like 16-year-old kid, he actually just got back from the war when this happened, and this kid hijacked the car they were looking at, and they chased him for like 30 minutes, and they brought him to jail, and the sheriff, told him like, come inside, like look at this dude. And he said to his cousin, when they went to go in the cell to look at the guy, talk to him about why he stole the car, his cousin just started beating the crap out of him, and the sheriff's deputies just looked the other way as he beat him.
Yeah, it entirely shatters that childhood view of your folks and stuff, or other family members when they start saying, yeah, back in 72 there in Oklahoma City. You're going, why was I never told this? And they said, well, you were a kid. We weren't going to tell you these stories then. It's like, okay, good to know.
I'm trying to think. So it's a little bit complicated because it got to the point where I wasn't able to talk to my folks about different things. Um, and so I don't really remember hearing anything too crazy. Probably the craziest one was hearing about the Thunderbird that my dad bought when he was in Guam. And the only reason that was crazy is because he would laugh about how there was like a hole in the floorboards or whatever. And he always had to slap his buddies because they'd grab the trash and just throw it through the hole in the floorboard.
So he had a boonie car.
I guess so.
Yeah, I was in Guam for quite a while. That's what we kind of called them, just island cars.
Well,
Okay.
it's like at least
And
we didn't tip it over. That's all I gotta say. Guam.
yeah, at least the island did not tip over. That wouldn't have been good. Oh, Hank Johnson.
I love that so much. It's just like if we keep putting bombers on this island, we don't tip it over.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, have you seen Hank Johnson talk outside of that though? I think he was joking because he does have that kind of dry sense,
fair.
that comes across.
But also, it's entirely
And
believable that a Democratic congressman would genuinely believe that in these day and age.
Oh, of course.
See, I thought you
Yeah,
were going to
of
say
course.
something about like orcas and ice flows and sea lions or something. I don't. Just thought that's where you were going with islands flipping over, but I like the dry humor one better.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was at it was a congressional hearing. There's an admiral there sitting there, and they're talking about, the personnel requirements of Guam and talking about bringing more Marines there. And all of a sudden, old Representative Hank Johnson says, well, the problem we might have, though, is it's a small island, and well, there is a fear of it tipping over. And this admiral, served probably at least like 38 years at that point, looks at him and says, well, sir, we don't anticipate that happening. And,
It had to be a joke.
that's what I'm saying. When you heard Hank Johnson, when you've
Yeah.
heard him talk outside of that, it's that's his
like that Dan
personality.
Quayle.
He tomato,
Yeah.
or potato.
I love some Dan Quayleisms. Or I love when if you're a politician, you have isms, then that automatically puts you above most people.
W had plenty of stuff.
Well, W did, but
Oh yeah, not a fan of the guy at all. But you can't turn those down. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you again.
well,
Like, okay,
I just
between that,
know that
he
I
goes
believe
out
the
on the
human and the
pitcher's mound
fish.
and actually throws a decent pitch too. I hate the guy, but you know what? He knew how to sell
Yeah,
himself.
Hawaii has always been a very pivotal role in the Pacific. It is in the Pacific. It's part of the United States. That is an island right there.
right there.
Or I guess he.
And if we get a bunch of trained spear gun monkeys, then we got this. I know y'all have heard of that before, right? Where it was Will Ferrell doing the
Bush, yeah.
George Bush.
I'm
I have a
just thinking
favorite.
too. We could just go to let's roll.
My
Let's
favorite
roll.
Bushism ever has to be. I don't know if the human and the fish can coexist peacefully.
Oh, man.
Remember that
Well,
one?
not on a.
Maybe we are in a better spot.
I was gonna say I have to go for the night and get some sleep. I gotta get up in the morning for work.
Making you work on the 4th of July, that's
Oh, on the
un-American.
4th of July? That's un-American.
I know it's British, but I'm
Oh,
gonna.
that's interesting. Yeah, on the fourth. All right.
So yeah, and I get the weekend. So I don't know.
It's a very Yankee thing to
It
do.
is unfortunately. R.I.P. Pickett's charge. Stand in solidarity with the cause. All right, brothers. Y'all have a good night. Take care.
Have a good one.
Happy
You
4th,
too, Otto.
all.
See you, man.
Yeah, happy fourth. Well, very good. But
Good old Otto.
that's a fair enough spot, probably. Does anybody have any closing thoughts / shilling?
You can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever it is these days at WillieE12. If you want to see me artistically ramble.
Well, I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. I learned 10 minutes into it that we were live and I was on camera. So for the first time, so congrats. This is my face. I'm on Twitter at Arthur Returns with 2 S's. I also write a Substack, Arthur and Callie's Thoughts. Plenty of essays there. It's going very well. It's a free sub. Not really doing it to make a mint, but I really like getting eyes on my essays. So, and I want to thank Wandering Panda for inviting us in. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Yep, I appreciate it. I think we did some good meandering, and you follow us all on X. You'll find me at Wander Mr. Panda, and take it easy, gents. We will talk to you later.
So y'all.